Hey there, my wedding planning friends, and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, thank you so much for clicking on my video. I'm Emily Summer. I'm a wedding planner based in Montana, and I make weekly videos on wedding planning tips and advice. Today's video is Seating Charts 101, so going to chat all about everything seating charts, how to create one, my best tips on creating one with ease, and making sure that you don't forget any of those little details to pull it all together and have an effective and efficient seating chart on your wedding day. So when it comes to creating your seating chart, this is, which if that term is, I've already lost you by saying the words seating chart, what that means is not the actual floor plan of your wedding, like where the tables are going to go, but the seating chart itself is how you will arrange your guests and assign their seats during your wedding, typically just your wedding reception during dinner. So the first thing that you're going to do is determine how you want to arrange your guests. Is this going to be in assigned individual seats, like every seat is going to be assigned, or is this going to be just assigned tables that guests will go to that table and then sit wherever they like at that table? Some couples will choose to not have any sort of seating chart at all. However, if you have watched previous videos that I have done on this, or if you have attended a wedding where there was zero seating chart, you probably understand that there are a lot of disadvantages that go with this. And if that's something that you totally want to do, then like by all means do whatever makes sense for you. My personal professional opinion is to always have some sort of plan when it comes to seating chart. You don't necessarily have to have every individual seat assigned, but at least having assigned tables that guests can go to is going to make things a lot easier for the overall flow of the day and making things as efficient as possible, especially if you're planning on having table settings set on your tables. If you don't have a seating chart, it's hard for guests to understand that a specific number of guests need to be at each table, because that's how many table settings you have. And then things can get really tricky. If a certain amount of people are trying to sit together and there isn't a table that has that many spots open, then people are like pulling chairs up and then there's a missing plate at that spot. So it just gets a little bit messy when you don't have things planned out and assigned. Basically, the top two ways to choose between having assigned tables or assigned individual seats is if you're having a plated meal. So if caterers are going to bring plates to the tables to where each guest is seated, this is when you need to have assigned individual seats so that caterers know where they are going to be bringing specific meals. If you're not having a plated meal, if you're having family style, if you're having food stations or a buffet, you can choose one or the other. The other reason a lot of couples will do assigned individual seats is if there's a lot of family dynamics at play or friend situations that you are wanting to group people specifically together, or potentially specifically keeping certain individuals apart. This is where having an assigned seating chart with individual assigned seats taking place is the route that couples choose for this. Now, when it comes to actually physically creating your seating chart, you will already need your floor plan designed. So if you're needing assistance on creating a floor plan, knowing where to seat tables, where you're going to have things like your dessert or your buffet tables or your dance floor, things like that. I have done previous videos about creating the overall floor plan. Today we're just going to discuss the specifics of the seating chart. So check those out if you are looking for a more big picture assistance on creating the floor plan itself. But then going in and creating your seating chart, you will already have your floor plan set up. So you'll have kind of the general place that all of these tables are going to go and how many chairs are going to go at each table. So if you start with this shell, you can still go in and kind of adjust things as needed. So maybe you're trying to assign a table of 8 and you realize that you have only 6 people at that table and a table of 10, a group of 10 people that you want to have seated together somewhere else. That's when you can kind of go in and tweak those numbers at each table, but it's good to have just the shell of your floor plan, where your tables are going to be and how many chairs at each table. So you can't really complete your seating chart until you have your RSVPs in. So this is why it's really helpful to have an RSVP deadline secured and make sure you're communicating that to your guests on your invitations. But make sure that this RSVP deadline is at least a month prior to your wedding date. That way you're not left with this very short window of time to accomplish the seating chart task and be able to have some time to follow up with guests that maybe have not answered or kind of on the fence about a yes or a no, so that you have plenty of time to finalize this. So you can't really create your seating chart until you have your RSVPs in, but if there's a lot that you're waiting on, or if you're just antsy to get this going, you can always start with your, what we refer to as your VIP list. So this would be parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, best friends, people that you know for sure are coming whether you've received an RSVP officially or not. And this will likely be the tables and the individuals that are going to be closest to wherever you are seated, so that they have, or wherever might be the best vantage point, so that they can see you, see any toasts that are going on, or have easy access to walk up and give a toast to you. Another important thing you want to do early on is decide whether you're going to have a head table or a sweetheart table, or neither. Some couples will choose to just sit amongst their guests, maybe have like a large farm table that is kind of a mix of friends and family, and not really do a formal head table. The head table refers to if you're having a wedding party, if you're having bridesmaids, groomsmen, what have you, having them all together at what is referred to as a head table. Whether you are going to have a head table that is just the wedding party, or a head table that will be wedding party as well as their significant others, or if you want to just have a table, just the two of you, you and your partner, just by yourself, that's what's referred to as a sweetheart table. So making this decision will also affect how you're going to seat people, especially when it comes to assigning your VIPs and how they will be in proximity to you two. So once you've made these decisions and you've received your RSVPs, this is when you will go in and start assigning your seats. So highly recommend using some sort of digital platform. It's going to make your life so much easier when it comes to seating charts. This can be a very tedious and overwhelming task, but I promise you there are ways to make this a lot easier. So my favorite program to use is what used to be referred to as All Seated, if you've heard of that, is now Prism with 2 M's. So if you go to prism.com, it has an online, easy to use tool to create your floor plan and be able to go in and you can actually assign every individual seat. You can also play around with table settings if you're wanting to see what things look like as well. So great resource to use for couples, especially if you don't have a wedding planner that's going to do a lot of this for you. It's very user-friendly. It's going to make your life a lot easier, especially in this process. So using some sort of tool, especially when you can upload your RSVP list, you can also use these platforms when you are tracking your RSVPs. Having digital RSVPs is key to kind of streamlining this whole process as well. So make sure that when you are having guests RSVP, they have an option to do that online. It's likely that you're going to get your RSVPs back sooner, and it's also going to ensure that this process is a lot easier for you as well. So once you have your RSVPs, you've got them digitized in some sort of platform, just go in and start assigning your guests. Now, there are some tips and tricks and rules and what have you when it comes to actually assigning these seats and grouping people together, but truly only you and your partner are going to know the best way to assign your guests, and it's really up to you on how you want to do this. So there isn't a huge rhyme or reason other than making sure that elderly guests and your parents and people that are very close to you are going to have spots and seats that are going to be close to you guys and close to being able to see what's going on through the duration of the reception. Another helpful tip that I like to tell couples too is grouping friends together is usually a good idea, and then having the younger crowds seated. If there's a table or a spot that has to be filled, that's going to be near speakers or a sound system of some kind or live music of some kind, having the younger crowd seated there tends to be a little bit easier of an option. Pretty much anytime I see elderly guests seated near a speaker, there are always complaints about this and asking the DJ to turn it down, and it just gets to be rather difficult, and you want your guests to be comfortable, of course. So seating younger guests near speakers, if somebody has to be seated near a speaker or sound system or live music or anything that's going to be somewhat noisy, having the younger crowd there is usually the best route to go. So once you have your actual floor plan and your seating chart assigned, you have this all on a nice looking map essentially. Make sure you tie it all together and have everything that you will need for your wedding day to effectively communicate the seating chart to your guests and make sure that it's going to run smoothly. So the things that you need when it comes to communicating assigned seating to your guests is a sign of some sort that's going to explain how the seating is going to work. So if you are only having guests assigned to a table and not individual spots, all you need is this sign. That's all you need, and then a way to label each table. So you'll have a seating chart sign that will have each guest's name and the table that they are assigned to. If you're doing it this way, there's a lot of ways that you can really spruce this up and make this like a decor piece at your wedding. So there's a lot of options for that. If you're trying to keep it as simple as possible, just a simple, large, printed out sign on an easel will get the job done. But basically you just need something that's going to have guest's name and the table that they are assigned to. If you have a really large guest list, I highly recommend doing this by having guest name alphabetized and then having the table number next to them rather than breaking it down by table. So having like table 1, the guests that are seated at table 1, table 2, guests that are seated at table 2. If you have a smaller guest count, like less than 100 or 80 guests, you can do it this way. It just takes a little bit longer for guests to stand there and find their name under each table rather than if it's alphabetized, you just go to where your name would be and then find the table number right next to it. In addition to the seating chart sign, like I said, you will need a way to label your tables. So if you're just doing table numbers, then you'll just need some way that you're labeling your tables with a number at each table inside. Some will choose to make this an opportunity to tie in their theme or their design, and instead of doing numbers, having some sort of category or theme or something that is tailored to the couple and making it a little bit more personalized. So maybe like places that you've traveled, each name is a different table name, and having that replace the number, and so you're assigning guests to a specific location rather than a specific table number. However you choose to do that, make sure that your tables are labeled with the corresponding way that they're labeled on your seating chart sign. Then if you are doing individually assigned seats, in addition to that sign, you will also need each individual seat labeled in some way. So the easiest way to do this is just with an escort card, and an escort card is like a table tent that's folded over and will have the guest's name on it at their seat. Another way that you can do this is having the escort cards displayed on a table, and that's how guests find what table they're at. Some couples will go the escort card route as a way to communicate to guests what table they're at. However, this is again for just couples that are choosing to have assigned tables and not assigned individual seats. So they can have escort cards displayed out. It'll have the guest name and what table number they are on their escort card, and then they will take that card to their seat. However, if you're having assigned individual seats, that spot will already need to be labeled. So I have seen couples do the escort cards or have menus that are personalized that'll have their name on it, some way that communicates each individual spot is assigned. Additionally, if you're having a plated meal, highly recommend having whatever way you're displaying the name at each individual spot, having some sort of key that's going to let the caterers know what meal is at that table. That's going to make your dinner service run so much smoother, so much more efficient, and make sure that you're getting through this dinner service plated meal a lot quicker. So say you're having a steak and a chicken and a veggie option, having like a little C marked on the escort card for chicken or an S on there for steak. Having some sort of way to communicate this to caterers is greatly beneficial. And finally, I'll leave you with just some extra little tips on how to best achieve an efficient seating chart. So if you are having an outdoor cocktail hour, if you're going to have your seating chart sign displayed outside somewhere, then I highly recommend having some sort of sign that's going to be on the heavier side so that it won't blow over, or that if you are having like a foam printed poster board on an easel, make sure you're bringing extra tape and then put the easel somewhere that it's not going to get easily blown over. I've had to track down easels and signs so many times over the years planning weddings that I always try and put it in a location that will not get blown over, and just make sure that you're prepared for that. I also recommend organizing your escort cards prior to the day of. So whether this is you yourself that's going to be setting them up, or a family member or a friend, or you have a wedding planner that's going to set up the seating chart signage and escort cards, Taking the time to just quickly organize those before the wedding day is going to make everyone's lives a lot easier. So either organizing them by table group, so putting them already in order of the table that they go to, or at least alphabetizing them is going to make whoever's life is setting the table up and the layout up for you so much easier. I also recommend having a printed list of all of your guests that have RSVP'd, as well as what they're eating if you're having a plated meal. Have that printed out and available for anybody that might be assisting you, and also send that to any vendors that might need it ahead of time. So wedding planner, your caterers especially, as well as a printed map or kind of like a key of what your seating chart is to have that to reference on the wedding day as well. This is also where having a professional and experienced DJ will come in handy, as they are instrumental in making this whole process run smoothly as well. They will make the announcements on when guests are going to go find their seats, as well as relaying any instructions that you need, telling them to find their name on the seating chart or find their name wherever this might be displayed, and then knowing to look for their name at the table that they're seating, if it's an individually assigned seats, or if they're free to just choose a seat at whatever table they are assigned to. So creating a seating chart is the best way to ensure that your reception is going to run smoothly and efficiently and have a quick dinner service. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, please like and subscribe to get weekly videos on wedding planning tips and advice, and we'll see you next week.